we've all been on, I've been on the other side. You guys have also been on the other side too, but coming from your side as VCs, what is the right time for startups and kind of early stage companies to start thinking about raising capital, speaking to you, speaking to other people? So I'm going to start with Cora first.
You made eye contact with Laurie and then looked at me right as you could. Just a good strategy.
I feel you.
No, it's a good question. I think, I think the first question to ask is whether you want to raise external capital. Even if it's several years or many years down the line, you kind of want to think about if you want to take external parties in and whether you want to have someone talking to you about strategy and having a, if not a full body in your kitchen, but a foot in your kitchen a little bit. But that's probably question number one. But to the actual answer, I'd say, on balance, I'd say start as early as you can. Go out and meet them, talk to them, get a sense of what kind of companies they've worked with before, and even find out who they've worked with before and talk to those guys on the side to say, what kind of partners are they? I think there's no harm in reaching out early and having a conversation. And I think you don't always start with a conversation of like, I'm investing. You start with a conversation of, this is my passion. This is where I want to take this. And I'm interested at some point in having partners and learning about the investment side of the equation. So I'd say on balance as early as possible. Some of the companies that we've invested in, we've known for 20 years, or somebody on our team has known for 20 years. And it took 20 years before the timing was totally right. So early.
Great. Laurie, any?
I totally agree with what Cora said. I think we always, with our minority companies, what we'll even do is start a VC tracking list. So the companies will kind of track who they've talked to, when they've talked to them. I think that's really helpful for when they do go out and raise. And like Cora said, and we're saying to companies, especially in this environment right now, it's rough out there. So you need at least kind of 6 months to a year or even more. And then it's way easier if you have a relationship, like you indicated too, with that VC. The other thing that we really like to see is we'll have some that will put us on their investor update list. So that I think is really helpful too. And one of the companies that we invested in, we did the same thing. Like we knew him for, I don't know, probably 6-7 years. He kept coming and we're like, no, not ready yet. And I ended up actually reaching and poking him because I was watching his investor updates and all of a sudden it was like, wow, like he's, had that big jump. So I would say just it's never too early. And you're pretty much, as an entrepreneur, you're raising all the time too, in my mind. Like hopefully you're not raising all the time. Hopefully you're making revenues and growing, but definitely important.
Great. Thank you. And again, welcoming questions online or here if you want more, we can wait to the end. Do you think your assessment, and I use the term investability, of a startup, as it changes as you're listening to those investors, as you're having those conversations over whether it's 20 weeks or 20 years, are they changing? Are they changing positively? And how do you evaluate those things? And has your evaluation tool changed over time?
I have to go first.
This
was one of the hardest questions when I looked at it. And I'm going to be quite broad, and I'm not sure, I'm interested to hear what Cora's thinking, but what I've sort of found in terms of what's changed, I think we've come through a period where there was lots of VC money and everyone was excited, lots of exits. I think we probably before made faster decisions, if that's even possible, than what we're making now. Now we're just a little bit more timid. We're kind of going, okay, really like the entrepreneur, they've kind of hit that target level of sales where that can get us interested. But we really want to see sort of who's on their cap table, what other investors are there that can help. I think those are sort of the changes I think that we've made. Because when we 11 years ago, when I started, I think it was different. It was a totally different scenario, but now we're taking way longer. We're asking way more questions, verifying everything, trying to, as you said, going for ones that we actually have a relationship and other people know them too. So there has been changes. I don't think I answered that question.
Yeah, before I was at InvestEco, I was at EDC, and they have a pretty wide reach in terms of the number of companies they work with. And I think for that kind of a firm, you're not on their minds unless you are reaching out and you are making a contact. And so that's sort of always the case for a certain segment of investors. And I don't think that would ever really change for that kind of an investment group. At InvestEco, I wouldn't say anything has significantly changed. I would say that I think one of the kind of part B versions of what's happened in the last market is I think you got a lot of people that were really good at talking about their investability and they used a lot of sort of buzzwords and things that you thought were kind of sexy at the time and those kind of hook people in. And I think in the last year that's kind of come away a little bit. Like you can't just say you're integrating machine learning and AI and blockchain and have that be the end of the conversation. But I wouldn't say there's necessarily anything that's changed too much in how we track companies or how they communicate with us, except for that sort of languaging. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. How, this is probably more important today in terms of how much time it's going to take to raise capital in today's market with today's reality. How should founders pick their VCs, knowing that they have to be chosen backwards? You can ask a partner to dance with you, but that he or she can always say no. So this dance has become a lot longer. How do you think companies should pick a particular VC? What would be the one what are the top 3 things they should think about?
Yeah, I think talking to who they've worked with before is really important. I think, I suspect, I don't know if this is true, I think it's true, but I know actually that founders love to talk to each other and they're more honest with each other than they probably are with VCs that they're trying to talk to. So go out and talk to other founders and make sure that who you're actually wanting to work with is somebody you would want to work with. Ask their founders tough questions, not just how they were in the good times, but also how they were in the tough times or when things were hard and other people sort of stepped off and were less attentive in board meetings and were less responsive to emails. Like make sure that the people that you're talking to are the ones that will be there for good and bad, or at least will, communicate with you appropriately. I think that's probably the best way. Did I answer the question?
No,
yeah.
Yeah, and I would agree. And then just make sure, like sometimes we'll have people coming to us that, it's a totally different industry, doesn't fit our investment thesis. There's lots of people, as you said, that you can talk to some of the portfolio companies, make sure there's a fit. I think it's, lost my train of thought there. What else?
Portfolio companies finding a fit and then just making sure.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So the other, I want to make a point too on follow on, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Totally forgot about that. Make sure that the VCs you're talking to are doing follow-on investments. So it gets to what Cora was saying, in good times and in bad. So you really want to make sure that they're going to write that check, and support you, because there's some, like we have some investors on the cap table with some of our companies that they're like, nope, I did my one check, I'm done. And we always say that, it's really important that cap table is super important so that you have people there that can support you in the hard times. Now, again, there has to be, hope and metrics to show that you can get out of the rough times. But I think it's absolutely critical. Do they write follow-on checks?
Yeah. And I think to that point too, like funds can be family offices, or they can be funds, or they can be sort of these kinds of funds where they have to raise each time they want to make an investment. And that's more difficult for follow-ons, but also difficult to even close. They may say that they could make this type of investment, but they would actually take longer, or they might have to scale that back. And so finding out what kind of fund they are and what their actual needs would be to close something is also pretty important.
I was going to go to the next page, but I'm just going to stop for one more follow-on thought. So are you more comfortable? It sounds like you guys are both more comfortable with existing, like people you're also comfortable with. How do you get comfort from the other VCs that you would be co-investing with?
I think it's kind of back to what we were saying. I think it's really critical that you do, like we want to sort of investigate the VCs that others are talking to. And we even, like, if an entrepreneur is raising, like we'll say, is it okay if you tell us who you're talking to? Because I think that's really important for us to kind of get a sense of who they're talking to. And I think sort of, once again, like if there are certain ones that we're like, we're probably not going to invest with them again. So it's just critical for us to sort of know who's coming to the party and who's not coming to the party too.
Yeah, I think the joy of Canadian investing too is that it's a pretty small space for the most part, especially if you're in a very specific category. So I think most investors know each other and have an opinion on each other. And probably have worked together 1 times out of 2, in terms of who you're talking to. So, I think there's sort of a pre-existing feeling of what kind of relationship they have and whether or not they do want to make investments together. Yeah.
Okay. So
Can I just interrupt? I do want to make an investment with this one here too. Cora's fantastic.
Mike, that was a mic drop. On the I'm just again randomly picking questions here. What deal structures are you most comfortable with? And what is your favorite color? Laurie.
Okay. So we do like the convertible preps. Like if we're writing a bigger check, preferred shares, we do like that. We will do with earlier stage companies, we will do convertible notes. We won't do safes. We just sort of feel like, we want a timeline put. With safes, usually there's no timeline. So that if the entrepreneur doesn't raise within a certain amount of time, we feel that we want a 2-3 year max timeline. So we'll say, no, it's always convertible notes for us. And it's clear, like it's debt. I don't know. You probably can explain the safes versus convertible notes better than anyone. But yeah, that's kind of what we tend to do. We tend to prefer to do.
Can I?
Yeah.
Sorry, just wait. So extending on that, reason you don't like it's the timeline. So you've had bad experiences, and you don't have to talk about who they are, but can you explain why the timeline was so important and why you've pivoted towards that being critical?
Yeah, I think, so how can I say this? With respect to safes, the other thing, I just sometimes feel like we don't really have as much of the negotiating power. Like when we go into a company, we want to make sure that the shareholders agreement is good. It's, we're not just going to write a check. And the problem, and it's even with convertible notes too, the problem with debt, right, is your debt. Like it's technically a loan until that thing converts. So we prefer to have that timeline. There are cases where maybe the entrepreneur doesn't raise, and then we're like, what, if we're putting our money in, we definitely want to get that equity kick. We just feel like we're not lenders. For us getting an 8% interest rate, just it doesn't do anything for us too, right? So we're definitely at the point where we want that structure, and then we would want that converted into equity at a point. But it does get into, we would just want to make sure that, we'll talk about the shareholders agreement later, but we just want to make sure that they have a board, they have a shareholders agreement. And again, when you're debt, you don't really have much of a say, like you don't have a board position. So again, that's why I kind of go back to, we'd rather have like preferred shares or common shares, and get on the cap table as equity.
Yeah, same thing. I think probably probably 40% of the new investments you make are convertible notes and 60% are some version of equity. I would say that in the current market environment, probably 80% of our follow-ons have been in convertible notes, because it's a very uncertain market. You're not able to totally come to an agreement about pricing the round. And so a convertible note is a good way to sort of kick that conversation down the road. And then I'd just say like the other main reason why we do convertible notes over equity financing is usually because you can't find some of the fizzy markets 2 years ago, like alt meat and that kind of a thing. And you're seeing companies raise at crazy valuations, and early companies are expecting that side of valuation. And so to kick that conversation down the road and see how the market sort of matures a little bit is why we ended up doing convertible notes for initial investments in those kind of scenarios.
And Good point. So when we do follow-ons, often we'll do the same. We're doing notes in the follow-on, and basically it's usually because the entrepreneur needs the money fairly quickly. And then exactly, you're kind of punting that down the road.
Okay. So I still don't know your favorite colors. We'll come back to that. It just felt like I was on like a game. Sorry. Flat. Okay. Well, that's the best answer I've ever heard. As you're looking at deals, we had the same presentations earlier about governance and those types of things leading up to this conversation this evening. What is the bare minimum you want to see before in a startup as they're starting to come to you? Share basic things in a shareholders agreement, share structure, advisory board, those types of things. So just kind of riff on that. Go ahead, Cora.
I actually I might be on the wrong side of it here, but I actually think that I'll talk about governance and then maybe shareholders agreement after, but like governance can be very light for a startup. I think you need to be ready to have a proper kind of reporting structure, at least quarterly, that kind of a thing. That's pretty base case. But in terms of requiring a reporting package and all that kind of stuff, I think you should be working with groups that are open to some version of flexibility and something that fits with the stage of the company. Like the difference between governance for a company that is less than 1 million sales versus one that's over 20 is huge in my experience. And so I don't think investors should try to impose a $20 million governance on a small company. So I think that's a flexibility that people should have. I guess on the shareholder agreement side, I mean, I think it's a bit table stakes to have a shareholder agreement when you make an investment. Usually the investor will pick up the pen for that, and there's pretty standard forms out there, CVCA, et cetera. And most investors will take that with very minor alterations to it. One asterisk being maybe if there's larger institutions, they'll have specific jobs reporting requirements or number of export dollars, for example, that kind of a thing. But for the most case, you should be able to stick by the ones that are readily available online.
Yeah, and I would agree. Other than I hate the CVCA templates. The only reason why is because we come from like simplicity, like we're a family office. So we have one shareholders agreement. So we don't have a voting agreement. And like, that's my only challenge with those CVCA ones is you've got 6 agreements or 5 agreements. Whereas, and the interpretation, what I found with some can get confusing. So Joe Gill and I always have an argument. So it's too bad he's not here. But I'm like, and we've done that. You and I have done deals together. We have one USA. So if anything goes wrong, it's clear and you know where to look. Anyway, I'm on my thing, but agree. So shareholders agreement's critical and standard terms are in there. So they're a really good, the CVCA templates are really good in that they'll have ROFRs, drag-alongs, like they have all those clauses and everything is sort of there.
Can you just say what full name is?
Canadian Venture Capital Association. Yeah, there's that. And then, you know what the other, like Mars, have you seen?
We haven't used the Mars one. Yeah. No.
I haven't used those in a while, but I think they actually have a bunch. David, do you know? Do they have a bunch of templates on Mars? Don't know. NACO does too? Okay, so there's lots of sources. Like NACO is the National Angel Capital Organization. So you can go, so the CVCA one, sometimes bigger, right? But I don't know if NACO has, I'm going to go look and find out. Do they have the 5 different agreements or do they have one?
Actually, there's if anybody was at the FCC Food and Beverage Show, the inaugural one yesterday, there's one of the speakers was Mike Fata, and him and Mike and Fleischman have a website called Fata and Fleischman, and they have all these free documents online, including like HR agreements and even down to sort of ESOP. So would definitely look at all the things up there. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know what I'm supposed to say.
No, you can keep. Is there anything else? Is there anything? So, one of the things that I'm seeing a little bit more recently are side letters. Any thoughts on the use of side letters in your deals?
We've actually never used them before, in all honesty. I mean, we've co-invested with a lot of other entities, and for the most part, they're only for very specific very specific reporting requirements that don't apply to everybody else. So we're not very experienced in them, and we have never really had a scenario where we've asked for it, actually.
We've only used, I think, side letters 2 times, maybe. One time it was a convertible, actually just this past year, convertible note deal, early stage company, in the med device kind of space. And so we did a side letter just with the advisory group member because we took an advisory group position. But I actually hate side letters too, if you want to know my opinion. And the only reason why I hate side letters is because there's some people that use them, but the challenge is if you're going into a deal and you don't ask if there's any side letters, like that is something that I need to start asking, because I have talked to other VCs, and they've said that they've been surprised. Like they've kind of, like when whatever happens, someone says, well, we have a side letter. And they're like, what do you mean you have a side letter? We didn't have a side letter. So that's the only, like as an investor, you kind of want to sometimes be on an equal footing with others.
So for the people online, I was making a comment that a lot of the accelerator programs we've seen, particularly in the US, create side letters because they're kind of the first investor. But they often contain things like anti-dilution on their shares. So if there's a subsequent round, they have the right to take equity. They might have a discount on that equity. And it was amazing when we dealt with one of those accelerators, how we had to explain that to them, that we wanted to get everything into the shareholders agreement because we can't have 2 conflicting documents. And they seem to be totally surprised about this whole thing. So definitely want to have everything that's related to shares in your shareholder agreement. The only things that should be in a side letter are, do I have specific reporting requirements to meet my requirements to my shareholders or my board, that might differ between different investors, but it would be a requirement of the investment. So.
Actually, the one other just occurred to me, but the one other scenario where we've seen side letters is when the cannabis legalization situation was happening, and a lot of larger institutional investors weren't sure what their policy was going to be in terms of exposure to that sector, especially vis-a-vis Canadian companies with American cannabis strategies. We did hear about people putting in side letters like cannot invest in cannabis without our approval, which is something you as an investor or everybody else in your cap table should also know, because if that's part of your strategy and one investor sort of has a veto depending on the legality of that, then you kind of want to know that tension, even if they can't legally enforce it, that there will be that sort of, struggle at some point from a discussion perspective. So that's also, in emerging markets that can also kind of exist.
Yeah, we ran into that very similar issue in this thing I'm working on in New Zealand, where one of the investors specifically said we can't use oil as a replacement, simply because in their country, hemp is identical to cannabis, even though it's not different. It's totally. Yes, thank you. Did I click to financial? Sorry. Oh, legal financial. Thank you. So what are your expectations from reporting early stage? Sorry, talking a little bit pre-revenue, maybe that first million. How sophisticated do you want to see reporting?
Oh, yes.
I'm asking you, Laurie.
Okay. So we definitely, with early stage, we feel that that's an area that usually there's like a lot of people are challenged around financial reporting. So we do say we want to see a minimum of monthly financial statements, monthly internal financial statements, depending on the company and where they're at. With some companies, when they're having struggles with cash flow issues, we've even gone to weekly cash flows that, we just kind of want to see, right? Because it's hard. Entrepreneurship is incredibly hard and you just don't know what's coming around the corner. So, we've got a couple companies that, and actually it's a really good learning process for them. That is the one thing that I really feel like, okay, we can help It's been fantastic just to see the entrepreneurs, and then they don't, they're not so panicked when they're checking the bank account going, oh my God, what's going on here type thing. So I would say definitely that is an area that we're pretty like, yeah, you don't necessarily have to have that CFO on staff, but, hire a bookkeeper part-time, like just make sure that you stay up to date on that. And then also we want to see with respect to any payroll, statutory deductions, GST, like all of those type things, we actually will have our entrepreneurs at the board meeting. They will just sign off, and it's a little sheet, and they'll say that everything's up to date. Because we've seen situations too where, it's hard, right? You have no cash, but, so people will either not pay deductions, not pay these things. And then, you get this massive balance. And at the end of the day, the board of directors is liable for wages and deductions. And so it's just absolutely critical that we stay on top of that.
Yeah, and I guess nothing to add except I think the CBCA, or at least the sort of standard docs, will have things like monthly reporting within X days, quarterly reporting within X days, annual reporting within X days. So that's all pretty standard when you take on external investors. I would say, like, for the most part, like Laurie said, this is like the one area where investors can actually help, and it's worth getting ahead of the reporting requirement, right? Like what do you expect? Like, give me a template of what your best reporting company, what their reports kind of look like, totally redacted, all that kind of stuff, and let me see what I can do to mimic that sort of quality or make it work for my company. So yeah, worth getting ahead of it. And I also do think, though, like, there's sometimes a tendency for investors, like, I want this thing, and then the company panics and goes build the thing, but then they hire a CFO, and that's not the result, right? That's a communication misfire. Like, it should be the right amount for the right company of resources and time and effort. So make sure that line of communication is open and you're both comfortable, kind of with a little bit of a push and a pull.
So on that, early stage, would you want, if you have a CEO who is not experienced with that stuff, a lot of our tech CEOs have never done that. They've, probably never balanced their own balance sheet, balance their own bank account, or reconcile their own bank. Would you there's lots of resources out there. Would you want to have people hire a business analyst to help them out at that stage?
I think it's case by case, right? Like, in some cases, I'm thinking of one company that we had recently, and we just said, like, look, you guys are awesome. You get production, you get, everything else, but you need to sort of hire someone. Like, and if you can afford it, it is worth hiring the financial expertise. Business analyst, in my mind, like, are you thinking more CFA kind of thing for modeling, or are you just general? Just general
grad, somebody with 5 years experience.
Yeah. Like, we always say, with respect to our companies, like, we always kind of say, we'll invest in companies that have figured out the 3 legs of the stool. And the 3 legs of the stool in our mind is sort of that production operations kind of person, right? You have to have that. And then you have to have that marketing sales expertise. And then you have to have that financial expertise. And we always say that within the companies we look at, we have to make sure that you don't necessarily, as the CEO, need to have all these skills, but you have to make sure that you have someone that does, and whether or not it's as I said, whether or not it's a bookkeeper, someone with just graduated with a commerce degree and they get numbers, or it doesn't even have to have a commerce degree. It could be just someone who, has experience and expertise in doing it. Just absolutely critical.
I wouldn't, like, I almost think it's worthwhile having a specific advisor for that, who you comp with some sort of equity, or you make sure that they're really bought into it. Cause I think it's almost like if someone's not doing, in my mind, if someone's not doing a good reporting and not on track of their expenses or financials or thinking about that, then that system just isn't there, and that mindset isn't there. So you want somebody who really thinks like a finance accountant sort of person, thinking about forecasting in the back of their mind and thinking about the structures and all that kind of stuff. So I think a decent strategy for a startup is to have an advisor who's very, very financially minded. And they spend, half a day a week or something like that. And then you have a business analyst, or you just use, Connect CPA, one of those sort of outsourced financial accounting firms. And as long as you have those two, like, you know, oversight and then you have foot soldier, then I think you have a pretty good start on your financials.
Great. That's awesome. Anything else on it? Okay. Yeah.
Or do either of your organizations have internal people that your organization uses and lends to somebody you've invested in?
Yeah. So we, like in terms of the same thing, right? Advisor, like we have PIC is a holding company. And so we have lots of accountants within our holding company within our head office. We also have an analyst. So she's got a master's in finance and a CFA. So she kind of helps on the modeling. She's not the accounting person. But we always say that's part of the value that we can add to companies too, as well, as we can add sort of that financial expertise. We don't do it for the companies. So I agree with Cora in that you need to find it somewhere. But we, we're looking over everything that we're getting. So our CFA, as soon as I get my statements, I look at them, she looks at them, we'll question the company. But yeah, so, I mean, it's part of the value add and part when you're looking for a VC or a family office, that's part of what you need to figure out what value can they bring to your company. Right? Like, do they have this expertise? Are they willing to actually help you? Or are they just saying, yeah, we've got expertise, but if they're not willing to help, it's not going to get you anywhere.
I think like relatively the same. And we don't have sort of accountants on team that would do full-time for one of our companies, but we have CFAs and that kind of thing. So more on the oversight side of the spectrum. Yeah.
The world does not need more accountants. Just putting that out there.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do. Because my daughter is in fourth year accounting.
As soon as Jenny graduates, after that, you don't need any more. Culture and communications. So we have been speaking to the group and the attendees about equity, diversity, and inclusion, not just how it creates value. Not just that you should be doing it because it's the right thing to do, but kind of holistically, how it creates an opportunity to make you better as an organization, how it makes you better as an individual. How do you make assessments of those? Cora, you start.
Sure. Yeah. Well, what's kind of interesting is in the food industry, I'd say that there's still sort of a representation issue, but it's naturally skewed towards more diversity than less diversity. You have a lot more female founders. You have a lot more founders who have a specific attachment to their food culture and want to bring that to the stage or have a general passion for food. So I think, it's funny. I think like a quarter of the companies we've invested in are like husband-wife duos, which is a weird specific carve out for food companies. And if you walk the floors for natural products and those kind of shows, they happen to be probably close to 50-50, I'd say, for female founders and that kind of thing. So we have a sort of natural industry leaning towards that, but it's something we do track. We do report and we do track the number of female founders, but also the number of females in the senior management of our portfolio companies and things like that. And then this is also up and coming from a lot of the institutions that you also report the number that are visible minorities and that kind of a thing. But it's been a bit of I should be careful here, but it's been a bit of a luxury for us that it hasn't been a huge challenge to find that bigger tent for investments.
Yep. And I would say, so when I came to our company 11 years ago, I was the only first woman on our senior executive team. And with respect to our operating companies, we didn't have any women. We're now at 50%. So we just hired a wonderful female individual to run CanGas Propane. So we're super excited. We're taking over the world, which is really exciting. But so we do, again, I don't think we make necessarily, we make decisions based on people. So we don't really necessarily make conscious decisions that, we're going to go have 5 women in the minority portfolio. But our numbers were pretty good too as well. We're a little bit broader. I agree in ag. It's easier in ag, but some of our other sectors, we are, I think at one point we were around 40% women. And again, I think we can do better. I definitely think we can do better, but sometimes it's also a function of the companies that we're pitched to as well. So I think from a diversity, I would say, we've come a long way. We're doing better. We're not a public company, so we're not sort of reporting. We're not a fund, so we're not necessarily reporting, but we do, as far as we're concerned, like it's about the company and the people. So that's all I got.
Okay. So an extension of that, because I'm coming from probably an opportunity with some of the deals I'm looking at right now. In one part of my one fund, it's just a lot of dudes and a few non-dudes. In the other thing I'm doing with the family office I work for, a lot of fake EDI, and you can see the difference between those. You can see the difference in kind of the lack of awareness that this is. Well, it's 2023. You should look around. Are you seeing? Just one sec. Just one sec. You can ask that as soon as I'm done. Yeah, we do. Yeah. The opportunity, I think, is for people to understand the value that's created from it. And I don't want to overstate, but I don't want to understate either, that people who are looking to found companies or looking to do this, you have to think right at it almost has to be in your DNA to look for those things, because people who are not like you make you a better person. So have you seen, Laurie's in your 11 years, Cora in your years as well, that's really been a value proposition, that it goes beyond just a number and a percentage? It actually creates something different.
I would say yes, definitely. And we've seen that, we've had some really good successes with our female founders. The other really good successes that we've had, that I'm an idiot and should have mentioned, is with Indigenous engagement. So my boss, from I don't know how many years, he owns fishing camps up north. So he employs a lot of wonderful, incredible Indigenous people. We also partner, one of our operating companies, we partner with Athabasca Basin Development Corporation. They're an Indigenous corporation, just in PA area. Just wonderful, wonderful people and wonderful results. So we totally have bought into the fact that, with respect to diversity, I think we're stronger, and the company's stronger too as well.
Yeah, and I think just separate from the sort of screening question of the number that are visible, it's also like, what is the dynamic of your board meeting or your general meeting that allows people to feel comfortable to speak up? Because I think, sometimes the person in the corner that's less comfortable speaking up, for whatever reason, is watching the room and taking a really interesting pulse of what's going on and would actually have a really interesting opinion. So I think separate from like the counting diversity points, it's what kind of oxygen are you putting in to make sure that people are willing to speak up? And I think one of the things that I found really interesting is that I think in a room where there's a lot of there's sort of a stereotype called elderly statesman in terms of the type of board member you are. The people that'll speak up that are young are going to say things that are a little bit surprising, a little bit more daring, and a little bit worth talking about. And so making sure that they're comfortable speaking up in a room of elderly statesmen is sort of worthwhile. And yeah, should make sure that culture is there.
What is your preference, sophisticated or unsophisticated boards?
And I struggled with this. Like, I did look at this question and I struggle with it because, well, like, what's your definition of an unsophisticated board? Like, I always think it's not unsophisticated, but maybe it's early stage versus later stage, or
so.
Like, are you saying in terms of?
I would say in terms of following Robert's rules. following like that, we have this cadence and this stuff is really good.
Yeah.
But you miss the point. So sophisticated, let's call it sophisticated for the sake of being sophisticated versus effective. So you can be unsophisticated, but incredibly effective, or you can be very sophisticated and you're going bankrupt because you don't understand the business.
Yeah. And I would say too, like, I think in an early stage company, like, a lot of entrepreneurs are just doing the best they can with what they have. They don't have a lot of resources. So they're scrappy. They're trying to figure everything out themselves. I don't think sophisticated Robert's Rules of Orders. It's very good, but very like, you have to follow all these procedures and principles. Like I think, things like conflict of interest, those are things that everyone needs to be paying attention to at the board level. But there's certain things, having an agenda, those are basic things, taking minutes. I think that's absolutely critical. It's easy. The minutes don't have to be complicated, but even what are the actions, right? Action items. So I would say that, I think it's too much. Like the entrepreneur has too much going on to try and impose, you still have proper governance, but you can have proper governance without a whole bunch of bureaucracy, I would say.
I don't know what Robert's rules are. So they're all unsophisticated on my words. I think one of the misconceptions about boards is that you need a crazy long package that you've sent out a week in advance. And it's just like, you're just doing reporting at that point. And I don't think that's effective. Even though it looks sophisticated and it looks really well put together and it's very detailed and stuff like that. But I have definitely been on boards and in-board meetings where you thought that the management really had it together because they knew everything and they were talking about everything, but they spoke for 95% of the meeting. And I think you learn over time that that's not an effective board meeting. It was sophisticated, I guess, but it wasn't effective. You didn't discuss. You would much rather have 3 slides with the 5 most important questions, one reporting of financials or something like that. And you spend 3 hours just talking through those things. So I definitely would pick unsophisticated over sophisticated, I think. Yeah.
And your favorite color is plaid, which actually explains that those two go together. Those two go together. We're running out of time. So I just want to go to its value. Is that what's up on the screen? Okay. When you think about interviewing founders, you've invested and now you're preparing your founders for conversations. How do you prepare them for tough questions?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I think you do need to get on a cadence first off of where you talk at least weekly to make sure that you're following the sort of ups and downs of the external environment, but also their internal environment and also where you are as a financial investor fund. So I think like keeping a through line through all of that, so there's no crazy surprises, is probably the most important thing. One of the things that we've talked about as part of our diligence process, which we haven't done yet, is doing a survey up front with a founder and having them talk about which parts of the business they like to be involved with and which parts they don't, and where they see themselves like needing support and advice, and revisiting that kind of survey every, call it half year or year or something like that, and say, what's changed? Is this still the case? Because I think getting on the same page in terms of where the business needs supplementation is important. Because I think like sort of, if I'm reading between the lines of the question a little bit, the hard conversations are often like, letting go in some certain areas of the business. And so I think having that conversation regularly and having something to refer back to could be a good way to sort of start.
Yeah. And I agree with everything Cora said. I think we've had to have some tough conversations with some of our early stage founders just in the last little bit, due to cash flow, right? Like, at the end of the day, you need revenue. And if you're not hitting your revenue targets, you're probably not hitting your cash flow targets too. So there's some really tough conversations that we had to have. But again, it was factual, in terms of, maybe your expense base is too high. So, those are the kinds of things that when the entrepreneur, sort of is keeping track of finances. They do have a budget. They can kind of see where they're coming. It's not, those conversations aren't as hard. And often it's the entrepreneur that figures it out too as well. So, a lot of it, like even with the tough conversations, a lot of it is asking questions and coaching. And then, at the end of the day, it's their company and we have to respect that. But it is, I think it's critical, like the sort of that, the more information we have, then it's not a big shock, right? I think that's absolutely critical.
I'm going to just, because I know we're really out of time. Are there any questions online? Any questions here? Sorry. And then we'll get David in the back too.
Hi, I'm Sue Timmerman with River City Innovations. I have a question regarding ESG, like governance and environmental. Do investors look for companies that are B Corp now and address sustainability issues and have prevalence to that? The reason why I ask, it does cost, I find in Canada, a company more money to get that rating and have that continuation versus in Europe, it's a little easier to sustain.
I actually because I'm looking at this, I actually had this exact argument last week in Auckland. I love what the B Corp means. Having a certificate means nothing to me because it's a certification organization. And I run into this with Green Star. Different countries means different things. So my rating in New Zealand will be different than my rating here, and I got to build my building different because I got to meet this standard here. It doesn't mean anything to me. I want what it actually is intending to do, more so than I want something to be called a B Corp because it's like the cool thing. But B Corp, you can get different B Corps, and it all means different things. And I've seen some very non-sustainable companies get Green Star ratings to greenwash what they're really doing. So that's my view. So
I don't have that. Go for it.
Yeah, we're a B Corp. No, it's cool. I totally agree with the spirit of that. Like, I think for the most part, investors are not looking I don't think, but most investors are not looking through the B Corp directory for companies, right? They're really looking for the type of thing that you're doing. And especially if that's embedded in your mission, I think all investors should understand that it's an expensive and costly process, and it should be reasonable. You should be matching sort of the appropriate infrastructure, appropriate certifications for the stage of a company. And so that attached to what Blair said, I think is really important. Yeah.
I got nothing. I agree.
So you talked about doing debentures sort of as bridge rounds, waiting for someone else to come in and set valuation. That's been a problem for a lot of our portfolio companies, is finding the lead investor, which is the most important one, right? So why is that so hard now? And why is no one willing to lead the development of a term sheet? Just want to get your thoughts on that.
I actually have no idea, to be honest. Like, I am surprised by the whole thing too, because we'll get approached by certain sort of companies, right, that will say that we can't get anyone to lead, but we have like, I don't know, 1 million raised or red circled, and I'm like, that I don't know. So again, I'm not a VC, we're a family office, but I do find it surprising. And I don't know if it's just a function of VCs not kind of holding back and not writing checks and maybe waiting to see who else is coming to the party. I don't know.
I think I have a pretty good answer. We're in the same position. Like the difficulty for founders finding fundraising right now is the same thing for funds. So funds every 3 or 4 years are out fundraising, and because of interest rates, people are allocating less to VC. So there's just less money going into the VC sphere. And so I think for the most part, when a company says we have this much soft circled, it might be a lot of funds who are in the same position, but not willing to actively write a term sheet because they aren't actively investing, but they're interested in the company. Yeah.
I'll add this thing I was traveling for. It's hard because people don't want your answer. There's a lot of people, I think, still with dreams that the valuations are still really frothy, and yeah, that impacts everywhere else. But I'm going to throw AI or ML in my deck, and now I'm worth another $100 million. So just finished writing using actually your term sheet as my template. Well, it was long. It was a long and frustrating negotiate. Literally took no. The one I was doing down south. Using that. No. Ours was really good. No. It was very specific. So when you're starting to set those things, the problem is you're drawing a line in your sand, and if the entrepreneurs think they're going to get a better deal, they walk away, and you've already put in 4 months trying to negotiate this thing. And as you get into it, well, when I met you in January, you said by April, this is going to happen. We're still negotiating on the term sheet in April. Well, you haven't done anything, or you didn't execute the way you were supposed to. How did you pivot? How did you do this? Well, we were just kind of waiting for your money to come in, and therefore Blair has to give the bad news that well, you just didn't execute, therefore your company is actually worth less because you couldn't execute on those very specific things. So some people, I don't mind being the bad guy in the room, but I think it's harder and harder to try to get the next entrepreneur, because you get a reputation of just being a bit of a jerk. And we've been very selective. So that's why I'm not the front man on some of our term sheets, because I have to be the bad news and I'm doing the deal in the background. So it's hard because you still want to find other deals. And if you're that person that has to come up with that number, then everyone else comes on in on that same number. And there's a lot of expectations to it, especially when the number changes because you're not executing. So
I have a question for Laurie. You mentioned that there are times where you found yourself not wanting to invest with another company. So I was wondering what suggestions you have for early stage startup for them not to get into the situation where the company that they want investment from is not interested in investing anymore. Yeah,
I mean, I would say there's it's a very small group of people that I would be like, just not sure I want to get in there again. So but I'm sure it works both ways. So I'm sure that other company probably doesn't want me in there either. You know what I mean? So I don't think that necessarily would harm an early stage. We still will do it, but we just want to make sure that the terms, whatever we're agreeing to, we want to make sure that, there is a good shareholders agreement. There is a board in place. And that specifically in this example, it's just this one organization doesn't believe in governance, for early stage companies, which is fine. I totally get it. But we do believe in governance. We're all ICD trained. I've seen, we've taught lots of our early stage companies about governance, and they're always appreciative of that. So that would be, it's not that I don't necessarily, this person's a bad person, that there's anything wrong, but I think we're just not aligned too. So, I think probably in the future, if that investor is in there, I would just sort of definitely, if they're taking a lead role, I would definitely make sure that they are going to have a board in place, or I would just say, you know what, we're not aligned on it. So yeah. So we try not to, it doesn't happen very often. It's very, yeah. So I wouldn't worry on an early stage too.
So question for you guys is, when a startup approaches you and is looking for an investor and an answer isn't given right away, what point of follow-up annoys you? Oh, here's another email, or here they're phoning and bugging me again. I want to make sure that I'm showing I'm engaged and following up, but I don't want to be that pushy one either to turn you off.
I think it depends on the investor, but what I tell people is, please bug me. If you're not bugging me, I'm not even thinking, right? Because at any given time, we probably have 10 to 15 companies that we're talking to, right? And those that we have some, we keep this big list, and we have some that, they haven't reached out in, 4 months, but I'm kind of I don't have time to chase. So that's part of the whole thing. Like, we believe in persistence and perseverance. We want to see that in our entrepreneurs. So totally fine. I would say, please bug me as much as possible.
Yeah, probably the same. And I think if you're getting slow responses or lukewarm things, it's, hey, let's check back in next quarter or something like that. Like, let's put something in the books. And so you can kind of make sure that something regular is in there if you really want to talk to them. But yeah, I think persistence is key. I think one of the companies in our pipeline has been in that for a few years, and the timing was never right. But it was a product of his persistence that we brought him sort of to the end of the funnel, I think, a little bit. Yeah.